In the 1700s, India was the center of the world. Imagine this. Nearly a quarter of the entire global economy came from one country. Gold, silk, spices, all of it originated here. Bengal alone was wealthier than Britain itself. But by 1947, when India finally gained independence, its share of the world economy had fallen below 4%. Where did all that wealth go? It didn't disappear. It was taken. And not just through weapons, but through ledgers, taxes, and trade laws. Welcome to the Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide. And nothing is ever as simple as it seems. The British Empire built one of the most efficient systems of exploitation the world has ever seen. They didn't just rule India. They monetized it. A civilization that once supplied luxury goods to Rome and China was turned into a field producing cheap raw materials for British industry. And they did it not through war, but through accounting. This isn't a story about nationalism. It's a story about mathematics. How one of the world's richest nations was systematically impoverished. In the 1600s, India was under the rule of the Mughal Empire. A vast and advanced civilization of nearly 150 million people. About a quarter of the world's population. Agriculture was flourishing. Ports were active. And trade was vibrant. European merchants would sail for months just to reach India's famous cotton. In short, India was wealthy. It traded profitably with almost everyone. But across the ocean, a small island nation was rising. England. In the year 1600, Queen Elizabeth granted a special charter to a group of merchants. The East India Company. It wasn't a government, but it would soon become one. It had shareholders, a board of directors, and eventually its own army. At first they were just traders. But soon they realized the real profit wasn't in trade, but in taxation. In 1757, a small battle took place in Bengal. The Battle of Plassey. With only a few British soldiers, they captured a vast region. Then they installed a puppet ruler and gave themselves the right to collect Bengal's taxes. That moment marked the birth of corporate colonialism. From that day on, millions of pounds flowed out of Bengal to Britain every year. London prospered while Calcutta starved. In those same years, millions in Bengal died of famine. Yet the company's profits reached record highs. The irony. This system was so organized, so by the book, that it didn't even look like plunder. It looked like economics. The British called it civilization. We are modernizing, bringing education, railways, and law. But all of it had one purpose: to make exploitation more efficient. The railways weren't built to connect people. They connected cotton fields to ports. The schools weren't built to nurture thinkers. They trained clerks for British offices. And the courts didn't deliver justice. They enforced debt. This system became known as the drain of wealth. Indian thinker Dadabhai Naoroji called it India's bleeding. And he wasn't exaggerating. Between 1765 and 1938, the wealth Britain extracted from India is estimated in today's value at $45 trillion. More than the combined economies of the US and China today. But this wasn't just about money. It was about the systematic destruction of a society's labor, art, and culture. Cities that once wove the world's finest fabrics collapsed as British textiles flooded the market. The weavers of Dhaka lost their livelihoods. And the ports of Bombay served only British ships. India was no longer a producer. It was a supplier of raw materials. And the most tragic part: even during famines, India continued to export grain to Britain. Millions starved, but aid was denied. Because they said the market must not be disturbed. Their economic logic was so ruthless that morality no longer mattered. Only markets decided who lived and who died. Over time the system became so entrenched that even Britain's wars were financed with Indian money. The salaries of colonial officers in Africa and the pensions of retired British soldiers were all paid with Indian taxes. In this sense India wasn't just a colony. It was the financial engine of the empire. Then came the 20th century. Colonialism evolved but it didn't end. This time the weapon wasn't the gun. It was debt. Institutions like the IMF and World Bank continued the same logic. Under the name of aid. Today gold has been replaced by interest. Flowing upward instead of across oceans. Developing countries send back far more in repayments than they ever receive in assistance. The system still works. Just more quietly, more invisibly. And that's why the British conquered India not just with their armies, but with their accountants. The ledger they opened in 1757 was never truly closed. The names simply changed. We no longer call it empire. We call it the global economy. But India did not surrender. It rebuilt itself, nationalized its industries, and redefined its currency. Today it's one of the world's fastest growing economies. Yet the marks of the past remain. The global south still lives in the shadow of old trade routes, now fossilized into capital flows. And it asks us a question. If a system is built more on taking than creating, can it ever truly be free? Because history has shown us this. Empires don't fall. They adapt. But even the most exploited can rise again. Like India did. It may take time. But it's possible. In the end we learn one truth. History doesn't repeat itself. But balance sheets always rhyme.